In the spring of 2003, on the shores of the world-renowned Chesapeake Bay, the Maryland Port Administration took the unprecedented step of empowering its stakeholders by involving them directly in their long-term planning process. The Port of Baltimore and its surrounding communities partnered with Ecologics Group, a leader in using innovative techniques to find sustainable solutions. They created an inclusive stakeholder process to find a solution for managing dredged material now and into the future. As part of that effort, a multifaceted group called the Harbor Team was formed. Through the Harbor Team process, team members from business, government, community, and environmental organizations realized they all shared a common goal: the desire to keep the port and their communities economically and environmentally healthy. Not only were dredge placement sites identified and permitted in less than half the usual time, providing tremendous economic benefits and significant savings to the taxpayer, but the port's formerly adversarial relationship with its surrounding communities was transformed into a collaborative partnership. For this remarkable accomplishment, the American Association of Port Authorities presented the Maryland Port Administration and the members of the Harbor Team with a national award for its unparalleled achievements in community and public involvement. The Maryland Port Administration and Ecologics Group are proud of their roles in this great success and continue to work together to implement the stakeholders' vision for a sustainable port on the Chesapeake Bay.
The primary reason we developed a sustainable ports strategy is that as ports grow and continue to serve as an economic base in terms of jobs and other positive impacts on the community, there are also significant issues with the environment. One of those key issues is how the port interfaces with the community as they grow in areas where communities reside.
A more sustainable port makes sure that we have the buy-in from all of the appropriate stakeholders to what we want to do, and have the various pieces in place such that we can undertake the actions and the development and the growth that we want to undertake.
The port has connected us to trade around the world and people around the world for the last 300 years. To be able to make our port operations more sustainable, that is, to use the dredge material in order to restore places like Masonville Cove, is really a win-win.
When they started with this dredge material about 4 years ago, I was a skeptic and said, oh yeah, they need some place to throw their dirt, so come to Brooklyn, we'll take it. But then they said they were going to build all this other stuff, like the classrooms and everything, and I thought, not in my lifetime. But they fooled me.
Staff at the Maryland Port Administration had realized that our old way of identifying placement sites was not working effectively for us. So through various discussions and various observations of what was happening in the community and so on, we said we really need to get all stakeholders involved in the process and talking with us about what we should do about the dredging program and specifically about placement sites.
Ports around the United States and indeed around the world are all facing the same sorts of challenges. Ecologics has been working with organizations nationally and internationally to help their operations become more sustainable. We've been working at the Port of Baltimore and with the Maryland Port Administration for 6+ years. We are in essence the architects and implementers of the port's movement towards more sustainable operations. The Masonville project is an offshoot of those efforts in which Ecologics Group facilitated engagement with local stakeholders to come up with a solution to a pressing port problem.
Baltimore is actually an inland port. Dredging is absolutely essential to the existence of the port itself. It's 150 nautical miles from the ocean. We have 126 or more miles of dredge channel that serve this port.
The
parts that we have to dredge require dredging and placement of a lot of material each year, and it's very expensive, and it's not a commodity, if you will, that is easily put somewhere because of the large volume of it. And we were facing closure of Hart Miller Island, for one thing. Poplar Island wasn't quite online for the bay material, and we were facing a situation where we could have had to shut down dredging, which it would have shut down the navigation channels and just totally choked the Port of Baltimore.
If there's any one time that we felt that the body politic was not interested in maintaining the navigation channels, that would severely crimp our ability to expand our business as ships get bigger. Originally, our customers wanted us to set up an operation in Baltimore because their customers were essentially in the Midwest. It was the manufacturing industry. The inland transportation from Baltimore to those points was much cheaper than from other East Coast ports.
You think about goods movement at the port, it's by far the most efficient and environmentally friendly way to move goods. And we have this hierarchy where we'd like to move goods on water as long as possible, then on rail as long as possible, and then the final part of the trip by truck.
The economic impact that we have in the state because of the 120,000 jobs is $3.4 billion worth of salary without benefits to Marylanders paid every year. Generates another $388 million in state and local taxes. So it's a real jewel for the quality of life in Maryland.
I think the port industry frequently feels like it's not well supported because it maybe is hidden from the average citizen, or the average citizen is not as informed about it as we might like them to be.
In light of the fact that they're big operators in that area, they have to be environmentally responsible, great stewards of the environment. And then a sustainable port also works well with its surrounding communities and all the public that are impacted by its operations.
The harbor team process started with the community not trusting government generally and the port especially because of previous attempts to locate dredge material facilities that were opposed right up to the Supreme Court level by the communities. There was tremendous ill will, distrust, and really an unwillingness to work together at all.
It was absolutely a fight. What changed is that they realized that they could not move forward. They realized that they needed to come and educate the various communities. They realized that they needed to partner with the communities.
When we presented it to the communities in a way that showed them they could benefit, then that turned everything around. They realized that when we said, what you should do, communities, is develop your wish list of what you want to see happen along your shoreline. Include in that a dredge material facility, but only as a part of your overall vision. And see how you can use a dredge material facility to further your vision of what you want your community to be.
This kind of turned the tables, and they began with just giving everyone an overview of where the potential sites were, what areas may or may not be potential for a dredge facility, why they needed a dredge facility, the importance of a dredge facility. And so it was, the first 3 meetings probably were just all education.
But what we did not include on the harbor team, which was a little different, was very different. There were no federal government representative and no state government representative. So that this was truly the stakeholder group. The state and federal government representatives attended the meetings, but only as a resource for the harbor teams.
What it does is build confidence, the community's confidence that this is an open, objective process, and it's critical to the success of the mission. Ecologics did that very well in the Masonville project.
I always said to the port that they were operating without a net, that the Port Administration really didn't have any idea where the citizens would take this process, what options they would come up with, and they had to be comfortable with that, and they had to stay in the background and let the process play out. Otherwise, it wasn't going to work.
The Port of Baltimore, and in particular the Maryland Port Administration, was willing to engage with their stakeholders and all the folks impacted by the operations of the port early on in the process.
And the process works like this. The Corps is charged with operation and maintenance of federal navigation channels throughout the country, and we provide funds for the dredging that occurs, and also a good part of the placement of material that occurs for a navigation project. The state conceives of an idea of where they'd like to put dredge material. Normally that's done in conjunction with the Corps, with the resource agencies, and with the public. Then we do a public scoping meeting, and what that does is it provides information necessary to prepare the environmental impact statement. Basically, it identifies the issues that are of concern to the public and to the agencies.
What we did was ask the community, if you were going to do something with dredge material in Baltimore Harbor, what would it be? You tell us what you would do with this material. Now this was, of course, after they had agreed that we did need to maintain the Port of Baltimore, and so therefore you needed to dredge.
It was a meeting of the minds between the port and the citizens in the areas that were affected. By presenting their case to the citizens and showing the advantages and disadvantages and what was possible and what wasn't possible, it made it a lot easier for citizens to say yes or no.
They selected 3 sites, basically. Masonville, they selected BP Fairfield, and they selected Sparrows Point.
This project would greatly benefit the community, first of all, by having clean waters, because there are so many toxins and pollutants on that site and around that site. Back in the day, we had good times. We want to go back to those real good times where we could actually come out and fish, we could actually come out and crab, we could actually have a beach again. And we don't have to be concerned about warning signs. Do not fish here, do not crab here.
There were about 3 or 4 potential sites, and 2 of them were going to impact the Brooklyn and Curtis Bay communities. One of the very first things that one of my board members had said to me was, we don't have access to the waterfront in Brooklyn and Curtis Bay. The 2 communities are built on a peninsula, but all of the waterfront is owned by industry. So although all the people that live here have water views, they have no access to the water. And then for the first time it was, we're going to do something for you, we're going to create a park. Well, let me tell you that there were a lot of dreamers who said, oh, that would be great, but there were a lot of people who were like, yeah, sure.
In fact, first year I said, where is Masonville Cove? Because all it was all this grass and nothing was there. Then all of a sudden the fence went up, some of the trees come down. I said, oh my God, there it is. And then last year we went out on the boat. The view was positively beautiful. It's going to be gorgeous.
I give the state a huge amount of credit for the changes they made in their processes. And what I saw from where I sat was a huge degree of going out to the public, and this was the first time something like this was done in Maryland. So it was definitely a sea change in terms of how do you find a suitable dredge material placement site. The formal forum, the first one that we use, is a public scoping meeting, and basically under the National Environmental Policy Act, that's where you gather information, particularly looking for issues that might be controversial or points of contention with the public or the agencies. And I can remember coming out of that meeting thinking, after a career that's some 30 years long, probably 2/3 of it involved in one way or another with dredge material, thinking, I've never been to a public scoping meeting or any other type of public meeting related to dredge material where I did not hear one voice in opposition to the project. Everybody who spoke supported it, and we didn't get any written comments in objection to the project. It was absolutely stunning in my opinion.
No one else is going to have a park like this. No one's going to have a nature center like this. There's none other, I don't think, in the country, certainly not being created as a community project in conjunction with a major port facility.
What we ended up with, I think, is a fantastic partnership that in many ways is a model for the state, where the Living Classrooms Foundation, the National Aquarium in Baltimore, and the community groups come together for nature education and to literally reclaim the Baltimore waterfront for some of our communities.
We had some people during the process of selecting the sites actually say, well, we're in competition with those other neighborhoods. What can we do to get the site here first? You can imagine how we felt at that. That was so unusual. Instead of saying, over my dead body, will you do it here? But how can we get you to pick our neighborhood first?
My advice to the citizens of Turner Station would be to watch Masonville Cove very closely, because I want them to come away from that project with trust in the Port Administration that we are going to do what we commit to doing for the communities and for our various stakeholders.
Working with the port now is really a dream that came true because they listen to us, and that's most important, and we are listening to them. We want to know more. The community needs to be more informed by the experts. We're looking at environmental cleanup, we're looking at air quality improvement. There are so many multiple enhancements and benefits that this project can bring to this community.
What it boils down to is the quality of life better for the people who live in the area where the projects are now being located? And is it better because they were involved in that process? And I think for Masonville Cove, it's absolutely the case, and I believe it can and will be for the other areas.
We took the brownest of brownfields, what was a ship-breaking site, where in the past we're not very careful about the environmental consequences of that.
The community is going to benefit because you had a very toxic facility over there that wasn't helping the bay, wasn't helping the community. I think there was like 30 or 40 sunken vessels. We're going to put dredge material on, we're going to cap it, and this is the way we want to move forward with our dredging program.
Well, first and foremost, it's the right thing to do. We shouldn't take any actions in isolation. We pride ourselves on how closely we work with communities, because together, the economic engine that's the Port of Baltimore can be even more of an asset to the state and to our citizens if we work together.
The harbor team is truly a national model that EPA wants to replicate in other areas in terms of the way in which it involved the community and the ports to achieve both the port's needs of expansion in a way that was sensitive to the community and provided real benefits for the community.
It's the right thing to do environmentally, it's the right thing to do economically, and it's also the right thing in terms of a more sustainable future for our port.
What we proved by the harbor team process was that they can do it better than government because they know their area better than government, and they share the goals of government. And if you pull them into the process right from the beginning, you can satisfy everybody, have the best project possible, and have the support of the people who live in the very area where that project is happening. And for me, and others have said, it's true democracy in process, and that's exactly what it was, and that felt good to be a part of that.